She's like a sickness in my brain, a vision standing by the window pane. She ripples through the blinds and leaves me in a daze. It's in the way her body moves me, the way she grabs me and intoxicates, until the signals in my mind forget to operate. In a fragile skull, I take my pleasure from my alcohol. She'll never give you any time at all. She just comes and goes, you know. And she's got me living in a chemical love, and I try to find the strength to know when she comes back to me again. I'm gonna come up from my hiding.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for another Coffee and Crime Time. Real quick, I have two things to talk about. First of all, the Florence Monster series is on hold for a minute because I am going through some stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening in my personal life. It's taken a toll on me, and for many different reasons, I cannot dive in to the research, the amount of mental organization that it takes to do a deep dive multi-part series at this time. I can't. I wish I could, trust me, because I was really digging that series. There's a time in your life where you have to look at what's in front of you and also be honest with yourself about what you're capable of doing and what you're capable of taking on at that time, and understand and be understanding with yourself that you're not able to take on that certain thing at this time. And that certain thing at this time, I can't take on. There's a lot of reasons for it besides my lack of mental organization right now. But I just want to let you guys know that I'm very sorry. I don't mean to do this to you. You know I hate to do this to you. It's not over. It's just right now I have to take on smaller things like Coffee and Crime Times and, kind of process through other things until I can return to it. And I hope you understand. However, if you are looking for a series that is amazing and will keep you entertained, have you seen Serial yet? I don't know if you're aware of this because I do post about it sometimes, but I am acting in a web series, a horror web series called Serial. I play a serial killer named Mabel. There's another serial killer in the series named Harold, and Harold and I, at this point, we're in season 2. Well, I'm not going to tell you what happens, actually, because we're in season 2, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but you should definitely go check it out. The episode we just put out last week, I think, is our best yet. Through season 1, we consistently put forth what I believe to be amazing quality work that honestly belongs on, a streaming service, but we have it on YouTube for you for free. Go check it out. I've linked the playlist in the description box. You will love Serial. And it has been such a saving grace for me throughout this last year. It's given me an outlet. It's given me a place to feel safe and happy and appreciated. And I really hope that you guys love it. And I want to share it with you. And I want you to love it. And I want you to understand how important it is to me. And hopefully you can support me in that. And there's so many of you who already have. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. It really does mean quite a bit. Okay. Now we can dive into everything that we're supposed to be talking about today. Today, we are talking about a developing case coming out of the St. Louis area, and it's been picking up steam, so I thought it was a good time to cover it. Also, it's been highly, highly requested. These next few Coffee and Crime Times that I'm going to do for you guys have been highly requested. So, yeah, the Florence Monster series was put on hold, but I thought I could make up for it by talking about cases that people are asking me to talk about. Did it work? I hope so. So, on January 13th, 2024, 39-year-old podiatrist Dr. Sarah Sweeney was found dead in the home she shared with her boyfriend, Fire Captain Robert Douse. Sweeney's death is still currently being investigated, but it has brought new scrutiny to the death of another of Captain Douse's romantic partners, 35-year-old Grace Holland. On July 22, 2020, Captain Douse called 911 to report that his fiancée, Grace, had shot herself in the head. And while that death had been ruled a suicide, Grace's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Robert Douse. The Holland family claims that Grace had been the victim of domestic abuse, and Douse had kept firm control over her and her finances. The lawsuit accuses Robert Douse of either taking Grace's life himself or encouraging her to do it through physical and psychological abuse.
We have learned tonight that the woman who passed this morning is a local doctor named Sarah Sweeney. We've been working all day to gather information about her death, especially in light of another woman's tragic passing 3.5 years ago.
A nightmare for the family of Grace Holland.
Yeah, it's hard to live in a world without her.
Back in 2021, First Alert 4 Investigates exposed questions about Grace's death. She had died from a single gunshot wound to the head. Creve Coeur police had ruled her death a suicide, but Grace's family was and still is concerned by how the investigation was handled. In part, they say, because Grace's fiancé is a captain in a neighboring fire department. Now, Saturday, another death inside that same person's home, this time on Conway in Frontenac.
We have a lot to talk about today, but before we do, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Scentbird. I would like to thank Scentbird for sponsoring today's video, and I'm excited to talk to you today about the service that they provide because I think it's a great one, and it's something that I personally use almost every day. 99% of my days. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever purchased a full-sized bottle of perfume and then shortly afterwards discovered that you didn't really like the way it smelled on you? Or maybe you used half of the bottle, but then you got bored and you wanted something else, and then that half of this full-size perfume just went to waste? I know I have. I was so annoyed and so disappointed because I spent over $70 on a bottle of perfume that everybody raved about. And then I just didn't like the way it smelled on me. It smelled differently on my daughter, Nev, but it didn't smell good on me. It just something about my body chemistry and the scent did not match. So I ended up giving this entire bottle away. But it doesn't have to be like that because Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that allows you to try new designer fragrances each month for just $17. And with each fragrance, you'll get a 30-day supply to try before you decide whether or not you'd like to purchase a full-size bottle. Or like me, maybe you don't even ever purchase a full-size bottle. You just keep getting 30-day supplies of different scents and fragrances from Scentbird. I've always worn perfume since I think I was 14 years old when I got my first bottle of perfume for Christmas. And it was my brother's girlfriend at the time. She gave me a bottle of Clinique Happy. And for over a decade, that is all I wore because I liked it. I liked how it smelled on me. I liked the citrusy bright notes in it. And also, I was afraid to try something new. But since using Scentbird, a whole new world has been shown to me. And I have discovered so many new scents that I love and that smell good on me. So I still really like fruity scents. And this month, I ordered a few different scents that had fruity notes to them. I got DKNY Be Delicious because it has notes of green apple and grapefruit. And this scent is a classic, right? It's clean, fresh. It lasts quite a long time. I love it for low-key days when I want to smell great, but also not have a lot expected of me. It's just very clean, you know, that just showered smell. I've also been enjoying Viva La Juicy Rose from Juicy Couture. It has those same bright citrus notes with some floral notes sewn in. And the best way I can describe it is by saying it smells so pretty, and I feel pretty when I'm wearing it. But the surprising winner this month was a scent I was sure that I was not going to like. But I ordered it anyways because I wanted to try new things, step out of my box. And this scent's called Madonna Lily by Dead Cool. I love it. I love it. Like far above and beyond the other scents I got this month. It has notes of sandalwood, black pepper, amber, moss. Totally not my usual style at all, but I'll tell you what, when I sprayed it for the first time, I was blown away. And then I kept smelling it all day, and it's earthy and spicy, and I feel very much like a dangerous woman when I'm rocking it. This is the scent you spray on when you're wearing stiletto heels and you've drawn the cat eyes sharp enough to kill a man. if you know what I mean. I love how small and portable the Scentbird vials are. They're so convenient to travel with. I don't know if you've ever tried to travel with perfume and you got your whole perfume in there and it just takes up all the space and then it's always spraying in the bag and then so much gets wasted and you're gone for like 2-3 days and you didn't need that whole bottle. I love these little vials, okay? Because they're easy to throw in my carry-on, as well as my gym bag, my purse, the glove compartment of my car. The convenience level of these little vials is unmeasured, and each vial is going to come with so much product, right? They say that it lasts 30 days, but mine always last far longer. And I no longer actually feel the need to purchase a full-size bottle of perfume because I'm having so much fun on my journey to discover my new signature scent. And you too can join me in my fun adventure by clicking the link below to visit Scentbird's website or scan the QR code that I have up on the screen right now and then use my code Stephanie55 for 55% off your first month at Scentbird. That's only about $8 for your first month. Once again, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen and then use code Stephanie55 for 55% off your first month with Scentbird. You won't regret it. Thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. Grace Holland was born on September 24th, 1984 in Creve Coeur, Missouri, and throughout her young life, she always had great respect for law enforcement and first responders. She even acted as a police explorer during her teenage years, being introduced to a career in law enforcement, something that would drive her to go on and get a degree in criminal justice. Grace had 2 sisters, and one of them, Laura, was her identical twin. They were incredibly close. Grace was bold and vibrant. She lived in a very out-loud way, which Laura says challenged those around her to be more honest, more real, and less filtered. Laura also said that Grace loved fiercely, without caution, and entered into everything with her entire heart. Grace was full of sass. She was driven and determined, and she had the self-confidence to know that she could make the impossible happen. She was beautiful, she burned brightly, and she had a ton of personality and hopes for her own life, but also for the lives of those she loved and cared about. But in 2016, Grace Holland met a man who appears to have drained all the light and fire out of her, turning her into a depressed shell of a person. Robert Douse was a Maryland Heights fire captain, and due to his position, he was well respected in the community and by local law enforcement and first responders. His father, Robert Douse Sr., had held the fire captain position before him, and his brother David had been a St. Louis police officer. Now, David would go on to get fired because of some, let's call it, controversy, but that's a different story. Robert Douse was so respected and admired that when the interim fire chief position opened, he was asked to fill it temporarily, a high compliment for someone in his line of work. And like I said, he only did this temporarily, but still it does show the trust and esteem that his colleagues and the community had for him.
Captain Doss says it's a great idea to have an ADC extinguisher in the house. If you do, you can use it to take care of an oven fire.
In this case, the oven was left on, so the fire kept expanding, and it can even get outside of the oven as well.
Another important issue Captain Doss reminds everyone about is knowing what's in your oven at all times, and especially before starting it.
We run on them pretty often. People storage things in the ovens that shouldn't be in the ovens, and I know everyone's kind of sometimes, especially in apartments, they get a little cramped for storage.
Both Robert and Grace already had children when they met. He had 1 son from a previous relationship, and she had 4 daughters from a prior marriage. Now, Grace was initially taken in by Robert's self-assured demeanor and his flashy Porsche. And not only was Robert a fire department captain, but he was also vice president of Liberty Artworks, a local company that creates memorials for first responders, started by his father, Robert Douse Sr. Grace Holland and Robert Douse were together for 4 years and engaged for 2 of them. They lived together in a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home located at 623 Fairways Circle in Creve Coeur, Missouri. Now, this had been Robert's existing residence at the time he met Grace, so at some point during the relationship, the couple picked out a new house together, located at 11880 Conway Road. Now, although it was the plan to get married and start a life together, Grace's name was not added to the deed of the house, but she was the main force in turning it into a home. She spent months picking out new floors, new fixtures, and interior flourishes, pouring herself into every window covering and doorknob to make sure that their new digs were perfect. On the evening of July 21st, 2022, at around 10 p.m., Grace snapped a few photos of herself and Robert Douse in bed together at the Conway house. The Conway house was the new house that they were getting renovated and ready to move into, but apparently they hadn't completely moved in, or at least Grace hadn't. It's complicated, and you'll understand why in a second. So it's been reported that Grace is smiling and seems happy in these photos. At the time I'm recording this, these photos haven't been released, so we don't know if her fiancé, Robert Douse, was equally smiling and happy. But 7 hours later, Robert Douse called 911 and reported that his fiancée had taken her own life.
911, location of your emergency.
Fairway Circle.
Fairway Circle.
Yes, ma'am.
What's going on?
My fiance just shot herself.
Your fiance just shot herself?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's a mortal wound.
Okay.
I'm a captain with the fire district with Maryland Heights.
Okay.
Shot herself.
Okay, let me connect you over to Central County, okay?
Now, the odd thing about this call, besides Robert Douse's eerily calm demeanor, and it kind of did sound like he laughed a little when he said his fiancée killed herself, right? Am I imagining that?
My fiance just shot herself.
Like, did you hear that? It kind of sounded like he was, amused by it for a second. But the other odd thing about this call was that the address Robert gave dispatch was not the house on Conway where Grace had snapped selfies of the two of them in bed, but the call was coming from the Fairways Circle house, which Douse still owned. So how did Robert and Grace go from being in bed at the Conway house at 10 p.m. to Grace being dead at the Fairways Circle's house at 5 a.m. So Creve Coeur police officers arrived at the house within a few minutes of the 911 call, and roughly 2 hours later, Creve Coeur police detectives were on the scene. According to the medical examiner, at 7:25 a.m., a detective contacted the office and reported that Douse had told detectives that he'd been in the living room when Grace approached him to give him a hug before going back into their bedroom without saying a word to him. A few minutes after this, Douse claims he heard the sound of a single gunshot and he ran to the bedroom to find his fiancée dead on the floor, her hands folded across her stomach with a .38 caliber Glock next to her. A later autopsy would show that the bullet had entered through Grace's left temple and tracked right and slightly back before coming to a stop near the back of her skull. The medical examiner determined that Grace's wounds had been self-inflicted, and after a brief investigation, the Creve Coeur Police Department agreed. Robert Douse had told the police that Grace had been depressed after having 2 miscarriages, and after Douse told her that he didn't have it in him to keep trying for a baby. Interviews were conducted with friends and family members, which suggested that Grace had been struggling with her mental health for quite some time. A boyfriend of Grace's sister was a doctor, and he confirmed that he'd been called to the house on Fairways Circle because Grace was having some kind of emotional crisis, and he found her in the bathroom with a gun in her hand. Now, this was obviously prior to the evening where Robert Douse claims that Grace took her own life. Robert Douse helpfully provided printouts of text messages, which showed that Grace was not getting along with her ex-husband and the father of her daughters, Christopher Kuhn. Reportedly, Kuhn wasn't paying child support, Grace didn't have health insurance for herself or her children, and allegedly, according to Robert Douse, she refused to get a job. Now, these text messages also apparently illustrated that Robert Douse felt Grace had pushed him into buying a house he couldn't afford. He said he no longer wanted to try and get pregnant with her, and he no longer wanted to marry Grace. Now, there had been some reports from the Holland family that Grace and Robert Douse had experienced a tumultuous relationship. Lots of ups and downs, with Grace moving out of the house she shared with her fiancé, but then moving back in when they would patch things up again. On July 22, 2020, Robert Douse went into the Creve Coeur Police Department accompanied by his attorney, and he gave a recorded statement to the detectives about what had happened the night Grace died. Now, this version of events happened to be entirely different than the brief statement he had allegedly given in the early morning hours of that same day. In this statement, Douse claimed that he and Grace had been sleeping in bed, and he'd gotten up early for work, as he usually did. He was standing by the closet, stacking clothes in his arms, when Grace got out of bed and left the bedroom for a few minutes before returning and giving him a hug. Douse told the police that he attempted to hug her back, but his arms were full of stacked clothes because, when you're getting ready for work in the morning, you're definitely taking clothes out of the closet and stacking them in your arms. Or maybe he's trying to say he was putting clothes away, so he had stacked clothes in his arms, but that's not really the way he said it. He said he was at the closet stacking clothes in his arms. I don't know, but it makes complete sense that that is what you would do when you're getting ready and trying to get out of the house so you can get to work on time. You just decide to rearrange or reorganize your closet, and Grace gave him a hug, and he wanted to hug her back, but his arms were full of stacked clothes. Now, at this time, Douse told Grace he had to go to work, and he claimed that she moved to his right side and hugged him by pulling his face towards hers. Grace then said one word, goodbye, and then, according to Robert Douse, she shot herself. Douse told police detectives that he saw Grace fall to the ground and blood began to come out of her head. As far as we know, during this interview, Robert Douse gave no explanation for why his initial statement placed himself in the living room and Grace in the bedroom when she took her life, nor does he give any explanation for the pictures that Grace took of herself and Douse the evening before her death in a completely different bed and in a completely different house. And you might be yelling at your screen right now, Stephanie, they recorded the police interview of Douse's statement, so someone knows whether or not Douse was asked these questions and what his answers were, and you may be right. Someone might know, but that recorded interview no longer exists since the video of it has mysteriously disappeared. It's been deleted. It's gone forever. According to Creve Coeur Police Chief Jeffrey Hartman, this was not done intentionally. There'd been a bug in the recording system that year. But at the end of the day, law enforcement did not feel that any foul play had been involved. And the way that they went about investigating Grace's death shows they probably felt that way from the very beginning. Allegedly, in my opinion, even though Grace Holland and Robert Douse had not been in the best place in their relationship at the time of her death. Needless to say, the place that they were in their relationship at the time of her death was toxic. It was dangerous. It was filled with contempt and resentment and hatred. And it wasn't a good relationship.
I think it's a stretch to say a motive for wanting to break off a relationship is a motive for murder.
We sat down with Creve Coeur Police Chief Jeffrey Hartman.
For us to be able to call this a murder, we'd have to have some evidence that it was a murder, and it's just not there.
Now, Police Chief Hartman said that there would need to be evidence of a murder, and this evidence just wasn't there. But did the police really look all that hard for any evidence that might support a conclusion other than suicide?
John's phone was never seized, police say, because he wasn't a suspect. Though they were reportedly together all night and, according to John, had been intimate, Grace's phone records, obtained by Graham, not the police, show she called him repeatedly, back to back, within just an hour or so of her death.
Why would you call someone who's sleeping next to you on the phone?
Police, Grace's family notes, did not perform any DNA tests on Grace's gun. Chief Hartman says that wouldn't have been helpful because John was also known to have access to it. The police also didn't do gunshot residue testing on either Grace's or John's hands. Chief Hartman telling us those types of tests aren't reliable anymore.
Just the presence of gunshot residue does not prove that you pulled the trigger, and that's the problem.
The chief is wrong. The gunshot residue is a pertinent piece of information.
Timothy Williams was with the Los Angeles Police Department for nearly 30 years, serving many years as a homicide detective. We provided him the police and coroner's reports,
911 location of your emergency.
even the 911 call to review.
It's a mortal injury.
He questions John's calmness on the call and the couple's past. Based on your review, would you deem this a suicide?
No, there's too many questions that I have as an investigator that have not been answered.
You heard from Grace's father, Graham Hancock, in that clip, and he told us that he was able to get his daughter's cell phone records and find out that she had called her fiancé, Robert Douse, back to back within an hour of her death. Now, it is my opinion that the police not doing DNA testing on the gun or a gunshot residue test on the hands of Robert Douse and Grace Holland was a huge oversight, but they explained this away by claiming Douse was not a suspect. The problem with that is, at the time when these tests would have been performed, it would have been far too early to determine whether Robert Douse was a suspect or not. These tests would usually have to be done the same day, and at that point, the police hadn't even questioned friends and family of the couple or done anything to prove or disprove Douse's alibi. They hadn't looked at cell phone records. They hadn't looked at texts between the couple. Now, best practices on a crime scene are to collect all of this evidence, even if you think you might not need it, because information might come to your attention later on in the investigation that suggests there may have been some sort of motive for Douse to want his fiancée dead. And by the time that happened, it would be too late to collect DNA from the gun or test Robert Douse's hand for gunshot residue. Now, I believe the Glock, that was the weapon which killed Grace, belonged to Robert Douse, was registered to him, so maybe DNA wouldn't have been so helpful in that scenario because it was his gun, but still, a gunshot residue test would have been incredibly helpful because there'd be no reason for him to have gunshot residue on his hands if he hadn't held the weapon. Now, the most damning evidence that Grace did not do this to herself is yet to be revealed, but from the moment Grace's family found out she was dead, they felt something was not adding up.
Grace's family says they're still not satisfied, continuing to fight for answers.
Somebody has to. You know, maybe there's somebody else's daughter out there I can save.
Graham Holland said, maybe there's someone else's daughter out there I can save. And as it turns out, someone else's daughter was out there, getting close to Fire Captain Robert Douse. On January 13th, 2024, 39-year-old podiatrist Dr. Sarah Sweeney was found dead in the Conway Road home of her boyfriend, Robert Douse, from an apparent drug overdose. The Frontenac Police Department claimed that Sarah's body had no outward signs of trauma and that it appeared she had been alone at the time of her death. The St. Louis medical examiner concluded that Sarah had died from a cocktail of oxycodone, gabapentin, and diphenhydramine. Sarah Sweeney became the focus of a sudden death investigation by the Frontenac police, but her death also brought new scrutiny to what had happened to Grace Holland just a few years prior. Reportedly, after Grace died, Robert Douse went on as if she had never existed. He erased all signs of her from social media. He moved completely out of the house that she died in and settled permanently into the Conway Road house that Grace had decorated, the same house Sarah Sweeney would die in. Even though Grace and Robert Douse had gotten a marriage license and were planning a wedding, after she died, Douse told people that he'd had one foot out the door, and information from a wrongful death lawsuit brought against Douse by Grace's family revealed even more disturbing information. Grace's family claimed, quote, on July 22, 2020, Grace Holland died of a gunshot wound to the head. The only living person who knows exactly what happened that night is defendant Robert Douse Jr. One of two things occurred that night. Either Robert Douse shot Grace Holland or Grace Holland took her life after years of being subjected to physical and mental abuse by Robert Douse. Either way, Robert Douse Jr. is liable for the wrongful death of Grace Holland. End quote. The lawsuit alleges that Grace and Robert's relationship was marred by psychological and physical abuse, and based on what has been outlined in the suit, it looks like there was abuse of all kinds happening: emotional, verbal, physical, financial, everything. Allegedly, Douse pressured Grace to quit her job and work for his family business, Liberty Artworks. However, it appears that Douse had the staff pay him for Grace's work, and in this way, he controlled every penny that Grace had access to. He also controlled how much gas money she was given, who she could see, how she spent her time, and when she could see her own children. In an open letter to the Creve Coeur police, Grace's sister Laura outlines why she believes the police failed Grace during their investigation. She says, quote, "Ask me how many adult friends showed up at her funeral. The answer is 0, because she was no longer allowed to have friendships," end quote. So let's go back to June of 2022, when it seems the tension between Grace Holland and Robert Douse was building. Now, at this time, Grace was pregnant, and she and Douse were living in the Fairway Circle house while they renovated and decorated the Conway Road house. On June 9th, Grace recorded a video secretly in which she and Douse argued. The video starts with Douse talking about Grace causing problems with him, and Grace tells him, quote, "You don't want me to die, so don't say that," end quote. In response, Douse says, quote, "I wish you'd just go away, but I realize that's not going to happen," end quote. The same month, Grace reported that Douse pushed, shoved, and dragged her down the hall, pulling her clothes off, and after this incident, Grace's mother saw bruises on her arms, thighs, and spine. Grace also took pictures of these bruises. Later that month, Grace called her mother, Patricia Holland, during an episode where Douse was yelling at her and throwing her things in the yard. Patricia told Grace to call the police, and then Patricia claims she heard Robert Douse say, quote, "My brothers in blue are not going to do anything to me. I've already taken care of that. You're a crazy girlfriend, remember?" End quote. Patricia Holland also told Grace to leave, but Grace said she couldn't leave. The Holland family also reports that Grace's 4 daughters told them that they would see Douse shoving their mother and yelling at her all the time, and once he scared them when he threw a phone across the dinner table while they were all sitting there at the table. The children also claimed that Douse would get upset and lose his temper over small things, such as the couch touching a curtain in the living room or silverware being out of place. Sarah Holland, remember this is Grace's sister, she reported that Grace had contacted a man named Mark Russell. He was the Maryland Heights Fire Deputy Chief Medical Officer. And she did this because Robert Douse was blowing up at home and his blowups were becoming more and more frequent. But Captain Russell happened to be one of Douse's best friends at the fire department, so nothing came of it. On June 24th, 2020, Grace recorded her fiancé behaving badly again. There's some bad language in this clip, and I can say from personal experience that the content of the clip can be triggering from the point of view of anyone who's been the target of domestic abuse before.
Now, do I have to plan on you being here again tonight?
No.
Oh, but you said that last night. So if not, I'll make other arrangements.
What do you mean?
Well, I won't be here then.
Why not?
Because I don't want to be around you tonight.
Why not?
I don't want to be around you, period. But if this is going to be some sort of forced fucking marriage, that doesn't mean I can strive to spend as little time with you as possible and take every little advantage to stay the fucking arm's length from you. Every little night I have to squeak an extra hour at Liberty, traffic, flat tire, whatever the fuck I can do to just extend my life away from you is going to be my priority.
I love you. I hope you have a good day, okay?
There won't be any trips.
Okay.
I don't want to travel with you.
Okay.
I don't want to see the world with you.
I love you.
I don't want to do anything with you.
I love you. I hope you have a good day, okay?
Fuck yourself.
Okay.
Fuck you.
I hope you get in a better mood.
No, this is the mood I'm going to be in.
Nope, you're just trying to be mean to me, and I'm not going to take it.
Okay.
I love you. Have a good day.
Fuck you. Fuck your cunt mother. Get the fuck out of my house.
Love you. Have a good day.
Well, then we will be selling Conway. Just so you know. So I would work on something, whether it's keeping the kids at Irondale or whatever it is you need to do. So you know.
Apparently, Grace had made a habit of recording Robert Douse, and she even played him one of these videos so that he could see how he was behaving. According to her family, this was a mistake, also something I can speak to from personal experience. When people like this blow up and yell at you and pick fights and bully you, they know how they're acting. They know how they're behaving. You playing them a video of it is not going to make them say, "Oh, I can't believe I did that. I am so ashamed of myself. I'm sorry." It's just going to make them more upset with you because now you've recorded them and now you have something that could potentially expose them to others. And a person like this, the last thing that they want is for their behavior to be exposed to others because they would like everyone else to see them based on the mask that they wear out in public. And so recording people like this, people who are not regulated emotionally, people who have tempers, people who use their anger and their intimidation tactics to get you to fall in line, narcissists maybe, that's never going to be a good idea. Letting them know that you have evidence that they're not the good guy that they portray to the world is never a good idea. And according to Grace's family, this was a mistake that she made because it made her a threat to Robert Douse. Text messages between Grace and Robert show a constant push and pull. They reveal that Grace wanted to be with Douse. She wanted to marry him, have his baby, make it work. But Douse wanted nothing to do with Grace, her children, or the baby that she carried. On June 19th, 2020, it appears as if Grace and Douse were having a conversation about whether or not they were going to be together. And Grace said, quote, "I hope it will be easier in a bigger house. It's your decision. But you have to stop the back and forth. I have a life to live too." End quote. Robert Douse responded back with one word: out. Grace replied with an eye roll emoji saying, quote, "Then why didn't you let me go to my appointment this morning? I hate you. You play games and it's cruel. I feel awful, and instead of trying to take care of me, you're out drinking and trying to upset me. You said if we kept the baby, you would be good to me. You aren't. How can I trust you? Every time you say you're going to do something, you make another excuse." End quote. The very next day, however, Douse was texting Grace and calling her baby. On June 21st, the fight was back on, with Douse telling Grace he was done with the relationship. And Grace wrote to him, quote, "How could you be so sweet yesterday? Are you bipolar? Because sometimes I feel like you are two different people." End quote. That's the Jekyll and Hyde of a narcissist. The back and forth, the constant efforts to keep you off balance. You don't know whether they love you or they hate you. You don't know whether they want to be with you or whether they want to have nothing to do with you. And Douse replied, quote, "This morning is a glowing, waving flag." End quote. Grace said, quote, "And I never know who I'm going to get. I just asked you to delete the comment. It hurt me. I'm sick with your baby, part of your family." End quote. Douse replied, quote, "Train wreck. I don't need or want." End quote. Grace and Douse went back and forth, and he appears to reference $600. He keeps saying $600 to her. We'll come to find out that apparently Robert Douse wanted Grace to end her pregnancy, and he was offering to pay for it. Douse keeps telling Grace that he doesn't want to be with her, and Grace keeps telling Douse that she loves him and that she's carrying his child. Now, this is a hard dynamic to watch unfold in front of you in these text messages, because most people would look at it and look at the way Douse was responding to Grace and say, why is she continuing? Because she continues insisting. He's gonna say things like, I can't stand you. I don't want to be with you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. And she's like, you love me. You love me. We're having a baby. We're getting married. You love me. And he's like, no, I don't. Stop. Leave me alone. I don't want to do this anymore. And it's very problematic, honestly, on both ends, because I really, really want to stress this. If your partner looks at you ever, even if it's just once, and says to you, I don't want to be with you, I want nothing to do with you, I can't be in a relationship with you, that is your cue to say, okay, goodbye, right? You don't force somebody to be with you. You don't try to intimidate or pressure somebody into being with you. And Grace appears to have had a lot of problems with Douse and his behavior, understandably so. Why didn't she leave? Now, was she in a toxic relationship that she felt like she couldn't get out of? Did she just love him so much she was waiting for like his old self to come back, the one that loved her back? I don't know. But I will say, the second someone looks at you and says, I don't want to be with you, your only answer should be, okay, goodbye. And it looks as if Robert Douse felt that Grace had interfered with his time with his son. Apparently, it was Father's Day and he was supposed to go on a run with his son, and then Grace had somehow gotten in the middle of that and had said she was going to go with them. And Robert Douse is like, no, this is not your time. This is my time with my son. And she was like, well, I just wanted to be a part of it. I want to be a part of your life. And she said, quote, well, don't you want time with your new baby? I want to be a family, end quote. Douse responded back, quote, no, not interested. You have the ring. You have the money. You have my final answer, end quote. I think that he means you have the money for, getting this pregnancy terminated. I don't know what he means by saying you have the ring, because that almost seems like, you're getting married. But I believe that the money was a reference to the money that he was offering to give her so that she could go to the doctor and have the pregnancy ended. Now, after this message where he's like, you have my final answer, Grace responds and tells Robert Douse, we are getting married. We're having this baby and we're getting married. And he's like, no. And she's like, yes, we're getting married. It's happening. And he's like, no, it's not. She's like, yes, it is. So then July 2nd, Robert Douse responds in all caps, I will not marry you, end quote. Grace continues saying, quote, I can feel the baby growing. That's part of you, end quote. And Robert Douse tells her that she's nuts. Now Grace keeps going. She says, we're getting married. You said yesterday we're going to be a family. Douse responds and says, no, he's decided he's not going to marry her. And she wrote, quote, yes, you are, because you are a good man and you will do the right thing as much as you fight it, end quote. Why do you want to have a baby with this man? Why do you want to be in a relationship with this man? Because this is going to go on and on for days, for weeks, all through June and into July. Now, it also appears that Robert Douse was having other relationships with people who included men. And Grace and Douse appear to be discussing one of these men in text messages. When Grace asked Douse if a man liked his picture, and Douse responded, yes, and said, quote, I can't have him around with you there, end quote. Grace asked, quote, why? Doesn't he know about me? End quote. And Douse responded, quote, he does, loosely. No sense in making it complicated. Don't burn my stuff, psycho, and accept me for who I am, end quote. Grace replied, quote, if you are worried about him accepting your situation, then it doesn't work. I do accept you for who you are, but our relationship is a priority, end quote. Douse told Grace that he was changing his situation, and Grace responded, quote, everything has to be honest, or it doesn't work, end quote, causing Douse to respond, quote, why do I feel like we're not on the same page, end quote. Grace told Douse that they were going to navigate this together, his sexuality. She said she loved him, and she told him, quote, you can like cock, but you have to love me, end quote. See what I mean, that it's toxic? And honestly, it's toxic on both ends. It's toxic on both ends because, once again, somebody like this, just the things he's saying to her, the way he's talking to her, the dismissive, very just vile way he's speaking to her, he's done. You can tell. Whether it's valid and legitimate for him to be done or not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is if somebody can speak to you like that, they don't love you anymore. If somebody can speak to you like that, you shouldn't want them to, right? You should want to get away from them as fast as possible. Now, Douse told her that he would always love her, but there was no more us, to which Grace insisted once again, we're getting married. She said, you promised. You love me. Then we have texts from June 22nd at 3:52 a.m. Grace texted Douse asking where he was, and he responded, go fuck yourself. She asked him again where he was, and he told her he was sleeping. She asked him, quote, how could you leave me? And he told her it was only for one night, but I'm leaving you forever next. Douse told Grace he wanted nothing to do with her, and she responded, lies, how could you? To which Douse once again told Grace, fuck you. Grace said, quote, if we were married, you wouldn't leave me over a miscarriage, end quote. And Douse responded, quote, I told you that I would participate in a funeral ceremony, end quote. What? This is so bad. It was very uncomfortable for me to read these. And like I said, they go on and on and on. Now, in December of 2023, Captain Hartman of the Creve Coeur Police Department asked the St. Louis County Police Department to take another look at Grace's death. And this was in the wake of the Holland family's wrongful death lawsuit. So it's not like this police chief was like, we may have gotten it wrong. Let's have another look. Let's have an unbiased third party come in. No, it was because there was a civil lawsuit. And according to the Holland family, the Creve Coeur police had failed them throughout every single step of the investigation.
Grace, who was right-handed, was shot on her left side. The police report saying the gun was found near her right hand, but on the left side of her body.
You got more questions than answers.
And here's perhaps one of the biggest questions of all. No suicide note was found at the scene. Instead, John told police he found 2 suicide notes in his briefcase the day after Grace's death. Problem is, Grace's family says they look nothing like her handwriting.
These are probably two different authors.
News 4 gave numerous samples of Grace's handwriting provided by her family to handwriting expert Marcel Elfers.
The first thing that you notice, the writing is entirely different.
His analysis, it is likely someone else wrote the suicide notes. Only signatures from the note and from Grace's previous divorce paperwork, he says, have some similarities. He says more information is needed to get a definitive answer.
There is enough evidence to at least say we need to investigate this.
Okay, so Grace Holland was right-handed and trained in how to use firearms. Remember, supported law enforcement forever, got a criminal justice degree. She definitely knew how to handle and shoot a gun. But the fatal bullet entered through Grace's left temple, a wound that's more consistent with someone standing across from her and firing, right? Because if I'm right-handed and I'm going to shoot myself, I'm not going to do one of these, like that would be super awkward and very difficult, honestly, to even squeeze the trigger. It would be very difficult. I guess you could use your left hand for that if you really wanted to. And I guess you could say she was playing the long game and hoping to set him up for this, but that's a lot of work if you're leaving 4 children behind, hoping that maybe somebody will pick up on the fact that you were shot on the left side of your head when you're right-handed. Additionally, Grace's hands were found folded over her stomach. But according to the Miami-Dade County homicide detective, Pat Diaz, he said, quote, "Your hands fall to the ground," end quote, right? It would make sense. Like you shoot yourself in the head and then you're not going to lay down and sweetly go to sleep and place your hands over your chest or your stomach. You're going to fall however you were when you were standing and did this to yourself. The whole hands folded over her stomach thing, that is very damning for me. Also, police did not locate any notes from Grace at the scene of her death. Yet the following day, Robert Dowse conveniently found 2 notes from Grace in her briefcase, I believe, or in his briefcase. One was addressed to him and one was addressed to her children. Yet there are questions about whether or not these letters are even penned in Grace's handwriting. And there's speculation about who may have written the letters, but because nothing is provable at this point, I'm not going to say who they believe may have written these letters. But if you look online and do some sleuthing, do some sleuthing, some digging, you may be able to find the person that is believed may have helped Dowse if these letters were not authentic and not written in Grace's hand. So Grace's family, the Holland family, they claim that the police failed to identify an entry versus an exit wound. The police misinformed the medical examiner as to the location of Robert Dowse at the time of Grace's death. Remember, the police told the medical examiner that Robert Dowse was in the living room when Grace shot herself. But then when he gave his official statement, the recording of which has mysteriously and tragically disappeared, he said he was in the bedroom with her and she was basically like hugging him when she did it. The police failed to remove friends of Captain Dowse's from the investigation. They closed the crime scene before reaching out to Grace's family. They failed to collect and process evidence properly, such as bagging Grace's hands or testing Dowse's hands for gunshot residue. And then there was the issue of the cell phones. The police had Grace's phone, but it was locked. Dowse had 2 cell phones that the police never collected because he claimed he needed them for work. Now, in 2021, Grace's sister Laura stated that she was afraid that Robert Dowse was being protected because of who he was. And phone calls obtained by the U.S. Sun revealed that there may, in fact, be a little bit of truth to this, or at least truth that Robert Dowse was treated differently than a normal suspect or a person of interest would have been treated. Because on August 4th, Detective Charles Parker of the Creve Coeur Police Department called Dowse to basically give him the heads up that they would be coming to his house to look at text messages between himself and Grace on his phone.
Hey, how's it going? Pretty good. Yeah, are you working yet, or are you still off?
I am off, but I'll be starting back next cycle.
Okay. What they want us to do is come by and look at your phone. Do you still have a text thread between you and Grace?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
What they're asking is that we come by, take a look at that, and take some pictures of it. We've got her phone, but it's a little bit difficult and expensive to download. If it would be all right, we'll come by and snap some pictures of the thread between you and her, and then that's pretty much it.
Well, I think it's quite. Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite. I mean, it goes back quite a ways. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I guess. Are you guys looking for something immediate, or?
Let me.
I guess where are we driving at? I guess where I'm trying to. I guess where are they driving at with the
it's going to have to be sort of relevant to, recent events. So,
like what, are arguing about having a baby or not having a baby?
That would be, certainly relevant.
I mean,
to show her mindset and what was,
I mean,
what was going on in her mind.
Pretty much. Yeah. Well, I mean, she didn't. I can tell you, she didn't. Threaten. Well, I don't know. I mean, if you went back far enough, I mean, there was times where she would, say things like, "Hey, I'm going to go be with our baby," and
right.
That's
the kind of stuff that shows that.
But you'd have to go back. Jesus, you'd have to go back. Quite a bit.
Yeah. And we can. I don't know. How many.
I guess it's what. I mean, is the family pushing on this, or is this relative?
It's everything. It is part of that. It's part of us just wanting to document this or that, and it's again, it also can protect you. If there's that, I'm going to go be with my baby type language. That obviously is in and of itself is, to be honest, it's suicidal. So.
Well. Yeah, I mean,
that's the type of thing that would show that this is something that she did all on her own, and of course the family has different views and is angry and whatever So
well, I mean, is it? I mean, are they think that like I shot her? I mean,
well,
obviously I didn't.
No,
I mean, what are they trying to?
At this point, no, but that was something that came up initially.
Right,
and that's why we want to do a very thorough job, and again, it's to preserve the truth, and it's protection for, I mean, I can't see your phone, so I don't know what's on it. I mean,
yeah,
but
I mean, it's us arguing.
Yeah,
I mean,
and every couple
back
does.
And forth about,
right?
Arguing about, getting married, argued about moving in together or not moving in together. Like I said, I've been pretty open about this. I was 1 foot in and 1 foot out of this relationship. So it's a lot of arguing back and forth about that kind of stuff, clearly. I mean, I guess I just, I mean, I can coordinate a time to kind of do it. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how far, back. Right? I guess I'm just a little caught off guard because I'm just kind of like.
I understand that because I'm sure there's going to be some things on there that. I get that too.
I'm just kind of curious what the family is driving at with this point.
Well,
of like
they're a difficult family. I mean that's I think. And where this may end up, I'm not sure that they're going to be satisfied with. The idea that it is, who knows? I don't know where they're going to push it or what the story's going to be, but,
strange. That's just very, that's very disheartening.
Yeah.
Just, it's dealing with everything is enough, and I'm just not sure what they're, look,
well,
she,
again,
she had problems, and
so let's just kind of look at it this way. Would you be available sometime today for me to look at that phone?
I could.
Or do you want to call somebody and call me back?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I'm not trying to. Here's the thing: I'm not trying to make it complicated by any means. I'm not trying to slow the process down or anything like that. And I know that other than us arguing on, the phone, and there's nothing on there other than us arguing on the phone.
Let me ask you a few questions.
You know,
so how far does it go back? Does this go back a whole year, you think?
it goes back quite a ways. I
Okay.
mean, you know, I mean it goes. I guess I'm saying is like it goes back months and months.
Do you have a way to print all of that? Is there a system?
Yeah, I think there is a way. Because I think like like Neil mentioned that the lawyer guy. He had mentioned something about it at one point in time about there's a way to download your thing. It was kind of like initially when you guys were talking about her phone, and I was like, well, and he had the same kind of question, like, well, what's on it? We argued, and she knew I was,
Why don't you do this? Why don't you get a hold of whoever you want to, find out from the phone company then if you can print it, and if you can do that, call me back and let me know, and then if not, then we can go through it with a camera and take pictures. But like you said, that's going to take us a very long time and probably a lot of photographs to
I guess
cover
I'm
that.
Trying to figure out where it's. I guess it's just kind of catching me, kind of at a miss. I guess I'm just trying to figure out what this family thinks that, what.
Right.
I don't. I mean, do we need,
Well, let's look at the possibilities.
Do we need audios of me and her having arguments? How far does this family want to go with all this?
I guess.
Now, I'm not sure if this is standard practice when dealing with a potential person of interest, but it did seem like maybe there was a pre-existing relationship between Dowse and Detective Parker, and that maybe Parker was reaching out more in his capacity as a friend than as a representative of a law enforcement body. And then there was the issue of the missing engagement ring. So the Creve Coeur Police Department photographed a ring on July 22nd at the crime scene, and it appeared to be the same engagement ring that Grace Holland wore, valued at over $20,000. After Grace's death, that ring was reported missing by Dowse, along with various other items of jewelry. In 2021, Robert Dowse was questioned about the missing ring.
Well, this investigation here is because he is the executor of Grace Holland's estate. And as such, he's, going over all the property that she has, and there are 4 jewelry items, I know I just spoke to you, Neil, about it, that he is saying is missing from her property. So that this whole interview here is just trying to figure out information on when these items were last seen, who may have packaged these items and delivered them to who, and, just kind of track these items down from beginning to end as best we can.
Understood.
Diamond stud earrings, 0.5 carat diamond stud earrings, valued at $700.
Okay.
An 18-inch pearl necklace valued at $875. The 2-carat engagement ring, white gold diamond engagement ring, appraised at $21,000. And the matching wedding band, which I think I just really have a guess estimate for, was right around $1,000. Do you have a better estimate for that for me, Rob?
That'd be about right.
About right?
Yeah.
Or where, prior to Grace's death, where were those jewelry items stored within your house over on Fairview? I'm sorry, on Fairways.
Fairways.
Yeah.
So I couldn't tell you on the diamond earrings. Don't even remember seeing those. The pearl necklace, I remember seeing in the nightstand. I packed that up. It was in a red box, and I put that in the tote that had her purse and the kids' birth certificates and stuff that she had. I kind of put that all together because I thought that was important. The engagement ring and the band, those were thrown back at me up at the fire station. I took them back. There was a guy that was there that witnessed that go down. I did take them back, and then after her death, I went to the ring box afterwards, and there were no rings in there. So at some point in time, don't know when, the rings were taken back, taken, however, obviously that's where I put them. I'm back in the box and put them on my back in my dresser.
Okay.
So those, well, 2.1, she gave them back. So that, in my opinion, they shouldn't even be part of this. And second to that, she took them at some point. Well, she would have been the only one that would have taken them.
What's the approximate time period we're talking about between her throwing these rings at you at the firehouse and then the last time you saw them prior to her, or at, at the time of her death?
Maybe a couple months.
Couple months?
Yeah. It was within that year. It was earlier on. We were back and forth, together, not together, so.
I think it's important that you tell the detective about what would have happened the week before Grace died. Okay?
Okay, so yeah, a week before Grace passed, she moved out, and Graham moved her out. So she was at the house, she had full access to the house, she had the house codes, alarm codes, came and went as she wanted. I was working, I came home, we were arguing about her moving out and leaving. I came home, house was clear. And when I talked to her, because we were still talking and texting and stuff, when I talked to her and her dad moved everything out.
So that it's clear to him, you weren't present when she was coming in, right?
No.
She had free access to the house?
That's correct.
Okay. And you weren't there, so you don't know for sure that Graham was there. She only told you that Graham was there.
That is correct. I didn't see Graham there. I didn't have any cameras or anything like that, but that's what she told me.
And where you kept things like the engagement ring, that was in a drawer that would have been accessible, or was it locked? Or
it was not locked.
Okay.
It wasn't in a safe or anything. It was in my tall credenza.
The last time you remember seeing these items after her death, earrings never saw, necklace when you personally packed it up, and you never saw the two rings, the wedding band or the engagement ring, after her death. You never
after her death.
Never. When you went back to look, they weren't where they were before.
Where I left them, which was in the ring box, and never came across.
Was the ring box still there, but empty?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Ring box was there. No rings in it.
So Dowse told the police that the ring they had photographed had been a fake he'd had made for Grace when she traveled, but reportedly, the police never followed up. They never went searching for evidence to prove that Dowse had paid for a duplicate ring to be made. They never really did any sort of additional investigating to his claims that the ring they photographed at the crime scene was not the authentic ring. It was some fake for Grace to wear when she traveled, because, I'm like $20,000 is a lot of money for an engagement ring, but you got some people out here like who have engagement rings that are $500,000, and I don't know if they're getting a fake ring to be made when they travel. I don't know. Is this a standard sort of thing to happen? If I'm worried about my rings when I travel, I usually will leave them in the hotel safe, or I just won't bring them at all. I don't understand why this was so important. And there would have been some sort of evidence with a jeweler or somebody that Dowse had paid to have a fake ring that looked exactly like Grace's engagement ring made, right? There'd be something, but there's nothing. So with the investigation being re-examined by the St. Louis County Police, it has recently been announced that they have turned their findings over to the prosecuting attorney's office, with Sergeant Tracy Panis, the department's public information officer, saying, quote, "This case was ruled a suicide by the medical examiner's office long before we became involved. At the conclusion of our investigation, as with every other death investigation, we never made a determination of the manner of death. This ruling is solely the responsibility of the medical examiner. At this point, the case is still classified as a suspicious death and remains active. It will be incumbent upon the prosecutor's office to decide if any further action is required or if any criminal charges will be filed." End quote. While that investigation was going on, an investigation into the death of Robert Dowse's newest girlfriend began, and police uncovered some evidence that showed Sarah Sweeney may have been going through some of the same trials and tribulations with Dowse that Grace Holland was. Maybe. This is very loose, but it's worth talking about. So at the time of Dr. Sarah Sweeney's death, she was in palliative care, And she was also involved in a civil lawsuit against her former employee. So palliative care is basically specialized medical care for people living with serious illnesses. And according to court records, Sarah Sweeney had serious medical conditions, including a bone disorder and mast cell activation disorder. For those of you who don't know, mast cells are a type of blood cell found in the body, and they are key parts of the immune system. They detect different types of triggers and tell other immune cells how to respond. They're also involved in helping to fight off infection. They're involved in allergic and inflammatory reactions. In someone with mast cell activation syndrome, the mast cells activate inappropriately in response to triggers, and this causes a plethora of symptoms, including fatigue, pain, itching and rashes, headaches, skin swelling, fast heart rate, wheezing, flushing, and so on. It's not pleasant, and it can also be a life-threatening illness, but Sarah's mother said that she had her symptoms under control with an EpiPen. Now, apparently, Sarah and Robert had been dating for about 2 years, and she met the fire captain after she'd moved to St. Louis from West Virginia. When family members began sending Sarah news articles about the death of Grace Holland, allegedly and reportedly, she cut them off, stopped talking to them. Now, at some point, Sarah Sweeney was working for a business called Best Foot Forward, because remember, she's a podiatrist. But she left that company and started her own company, and then she sued Best Foot Forward and its founder, Dr. Franklin Harry, in November of 2022, alleging gender discrimination, disability discrimination, sexual harassment, health insurance violations, and a lack of compensation for work she had done. Sarah said that Best Foot Forward had denied her health benefits and caused her to incur medical debt and business loans when she left the company to start her own practice. As of December 21st, Sarah told the court that her personal assets consisted of just over $200, and she said, quote, "I moved to St. Louis in order to work for the defendants." The defendants would be Best Foot Forward in this case. Due to the financial exigencies caused by that employment, by not being paid fully or consistently, and by not having health insurance, I have alternately been homeless and moved several times since I arrived. I'm currently living with my boyfriend. That's Robert Douse. Most of my belongings are in boxes, end quote. Now, Best Foot Forward and Dr. Harry quickly filed a countersuit in which Dr. Sarah Sweeney's mental and physical health during the time period referenced were presented as key issues. This lawsuit included messages that Sarah had been sending her friend and previous coworker, Danielle Mancunas, in March of 2022. Sarah was trying to convince Danielle to go against her employee and support Sarah in her lawsuit, despite the personal and professional backlash that Danielle might face. In part, the email reads, quote, "All I ask is that you do the right thing in your heart. I'm devastated to know that the one person who I knew I could count on and who I knew would be there for me, Sherry, has seen all of our texts and how you and I were scared but promised to stick up for each other and how you said you didn't want to quit and leave me alone working there. I'm not hurt, not mad. I didn't think someone would literally agree with a person being investigated by the Attorney General for fraud, could lose his license, and is not respected in St. Louis. His acquaintances through your job probably have opinions of him. Even Pam, the graft rep, talked shit on him when all of this went down. He was fired from another practice for fraud concerns. If you want to support him and not talk to Sherry, that's okay. But I just hope you know that doing the right thing, no matter the cost, will never let you down. I'll likely lose and be embarrassed by him, and my lawyer will be embarrassed for me, because this paints the picture that I am lying about everything, and it's because you don't want your job affected, which I understand. But guess what, Danielle? I've been homeless. I've had to move in with my boyfriend, the murderer, which has been scary at times. I've lost every penny and closed out my savings account." End quote. Now, Laura Holland, who's been in touch with Sarah Sweeney's family, she says she feels as if she failed to protect Sarah from the same abuse her sister Grace suffered through. And Laura said, quote, "I had taken Grace from him, Robert Douse, 4 times. I'd moved her in and out of his house, and he'd always come back. It was the controlling relationship of love bombing and then tearing her down." End quote. And once again, I hate to bring it back to this, but love bombing and then devaluing is a sign of narcissistic abuse as well. It is a textbook NPD. So are we dealing with a narcissist here in Robert Douse? Maybe or maybe not. There could be narcissistic qualities in both Grace Holland and Sarah Sweeney. I think that the dynamics of the relationship between Grace and Robert Douse were toxic right from the get-go, honestly. You don't talk to people like the way that Grace and Robert spoke to each other when you love them unconditionally and you want what's best for them. It was a bad relationship to be in. We don't know as much about Sarah Sweeney's relationship with Robert Douse, And as far as I can tell, besides that one mention in that email of moving in with her boyfriend, the murderer, and saying it's been scary at times, there was no allegations of physical abuse from Robert Douse towards Sarah Sweeney. There was no friends coming forward saying that Sarah was scared or had tried to leave. It just looks like she was in a bad place financially and honestly, mentally and emotionally because of her health. And so she's just kind of saying, like, it sucks that the only option I have is to live with this person who may have murdered his past girlfriend. But as of now, that's where we are with this case, or these two cases combined. And I want to give you some final thoughts before moving into Stephanie's small business showcase. And my final thoughts are basically this. I don't necessarily think that there's enough evidence or proof or even support at this point to say that Robert Douse did something to Sarah Sweeney. As far as we know, there were no issues between them. It's not like they were fighting, or at least not like we know that they were fighting. And she did have a medical condition, so this could have been something that happened to her naturally. Once again, the medical examiner gave her cause of death as basically an overdose of this cocktail of drugs. The most important and the most contributory of them all being the hydrocodone, the pain medicine, right? Because a gabapentin is technically an anticonvulsant, and then the other one was just basically like Benadryl, like an allergy medication, which would make sense because of her mast cell activation syndrome, because it's basically an overreaction of the immune system. It's like your immune system is sensing triggers everywhere where they shouldn't be. It sounds a lot like, psoriasis or some other autoimmune disease like that, or lupus even. So that makes sense that she would have like gabapentin and the allergy medication. The pain medication, the opioid, that would have been the one drug that contributed to an overdose the most. And we don't have all the details, like how much was in her system. Actually, while I'm saying that, let's pull up really quick and see if there's anything new about the death of Sarah Sweeney. Yeah, so it doesn't appear that there's much new. It just says that Sarah Sweeney's death was classified as sudden, and the St. Louis Medical Examiner's Office has concluded her immediate cause of death was this overdose of oxycodone, gabapentin, and the Benadryl, basically, and it also appeared she was home alone when she died. Her manner of death is still undetermined, and investigators are actively investigating the case, and the full autopsy report has yet to be released by the ME's office. So we don't really know how much of the oxycodone was in her system, but oxycodone is a prescription-only controlled opioid, traditionally used to treat moderate to severe pain. It can be addictive. It's often abused. Gabapentin is also prescribed. It's used to treat nerve pain and seizures. And then you've got the Benadryl. Now, they say it's unclear whether Sweeney was prescribed oxycodone or gabapentin, and Douse has not been hit with any charges relating to her death. This article from the U.S. Sun also says that Sweeney cut off her family around 2 years ago after her mother sent her news articles about Holland's death, Grace Holland's death, and told her to stay away from Douse. They continue to date, even though Sweeney allegedly described him as abusive in text messages cited in a counterclaim by her former employee, Best Foot Forward. I don't really know if what she said to Danielle was that Douse was abusive, but my final thoughts are basically this. There's just not enough right now to even go down the path that Robert Douse had anything to do with Sarah Sweeney's death. She was sick. She was taking medication. She was probably in a lot of pain. She could have taken too much medication. We'll see when the full autopsy report is released, including the toxicology report. But Grace Holland, I mean, Grace Holland's death, it's hard for me to see how it could have gone down the way Robert Douse said it went down. And that's kind of my issue here, because if you were able to do it once, are you not able to do it again? Could he have something to do with Sarah Sweeney's death if he was responsible for Grace Holland's death? I'm not saying he's responsible for either of these women dying, but if he was responsible for what happened to Grace Holland, and we know he has it in him to be very mean, very cruel, it would be more understandable and easier for me to believe that he may have had a hand in Sarah Sweeney's death. And at that point, he couldn't really be mad for anybody thinking that he may have been involved with Sarah Sweeney's death, because he had been involved with Grace Holland's death. And that is if it comes out that he was involved with Grace Holland's death. But it's a crazy case, honestly. It's very confusing and it's very sad, because we have two women who are dead. They both happened to date the same man. They both happened to live in the same house, actually, and both houses that he had one of his girlfriends died in, which is, is that a coincidence? If it's a coincidence, then you are the unluckiest person alive. Those are my final thoughts, but I want to hear what yours are after hearing what details we have about these two cases. And now we're going to do Stephanie's Small Business Showcase. And today's small business comes to us from Jordan, who owns Timeless Engraving Co. Now, Jordan's working full-time and attending events every weekend, trying to get her business seen and out there. So that's what we're going to have to do for her right now. We're going to get her business out there, get it seen, because her passion is to transform everyday items into timeless treasures. She specializes in wood-burning photos and personalized laser-engraved designs, and she strives to create pieces that encapsulate your cherished moments, turning them into lasting memories. Not only does she create these beautiful, rustic, such aesthetically pleasing cutting boards, trays, and charcuterie boards, but also wood-burning photos, coasters, wedding decor, such as table number signs and guest books. These are beautiful pieces, timeless, some might say. I would. And you should definitely check out the website and give Jordan a shout out. Let her know that the Harlowe fam has her back, because we do. And if there's something on there that you like or take a shine to, go ahead and order it. We have to support each other. We have to take care of each other, because nobody else is going to. I've discovered that. Anyways, that's all from me today, but I'll be back with another Coffee and Crime Time for you very soon. Until then, stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.
Well, the levee don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down, and that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. All these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say a Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. So you got to let it go. I got blood.